Within our gallery, we have always showcased extraordinary pieces. In this case, we are going to present to you a games table that is not only unique and exceptional, but also has a very important provenance. For the history of Italian furniture, that of one of the most important cabinet makers, Giuseppe Maggiolini. I am Enrico Sala, fine art expert at Mano in Mano. And today we are going to examine this games table from the workshop of Giuseppe Maggiolini, whom we've already come across in other works through the fine art collections. Giuseppe Maggiolini, as we know, was born in 1738 and worked in Parabiago. He was essentially trained within the Rococo Riccal style, but later he quickly mastered all the techniques and tastes, accompanied by a series of the most important artistic figures of the time, both architects such as Gemerli and Albertolli, and painters like Appiani or Levati, accompanied and guided him in the creation of neoclassical furnishings. He is undoubtedly one of the most important cabinet makers for Italian furniture, comparable to Piffetti as an international name, and he created precisely these furnishings. With a technique that continually strives for perfection in marquetry and overlays, playing with different woods, to give a tone, a colour palette to his furniture, creating depth, almost like a painting. Giuseppe Maggiolini had a large workshop because he worked for the Archduke throughout the period of Austrian presence in Milan. And then he would work for the Milanese bourgeoisie and for those present during the Napoleonic period in Milan. In the 19th century, he began to grow old, had a large workshop, and his output was considerable. We know that he produced a great number of these tables, both for private commissions and for imperial productions. For example, the Villa Reale in Monza. A great many of them were made, and quite a few are still around today. The type of furniture comes in two versions. One version has a top that folds in half and opens up, with the legs swinging out and flipping over, so it's the typical games table. This is a second version, which is made in two different ways, either square or slightly rectangular, as in this case, where the top has a lever that allows you to lift it up. And flip it over. When you flip it over, there's green bays on the back for playing games, so you can use the table for entertainment, while in this position it's a decorative piece. On this series of tables, inlay work is rarely found on the legs. In this case, we have elegant legs for this series of small tables because they are made of walnut, solid wood carved and gouged with this central motif, and they end with a foot that is, instead, inlaid. What's inlaid and more richly decorated is the tabletop, set within this shaped border and worked with this ribbon inlay. While on the surface we have a beautiful trompe-l'oeil effect. There's this square sheet that rests like a diamond on top of another sheet. The inlay is a motif that we also find within the collection of drawings at the Sforza Castle, which contains a considerable number of designs, among which this motif appears, like these acanthus leaves that adorn the central oval. Giuseppe Maggiolini is famous for using a great variety of woods to be able to paint through different shades and create these contrasts. In this case, we have something beautiful. Rosewood, bois de rose, walnut, maple, some of it even stained. Various types of wood like mahogany, amaranth, and in this central part, as in the triangular reserves, we have a very dense and carefully selected walnut burr. When Giuseppe Maggiolini's fame exploded, the requests coming to the workshop and the master became numerous and complex. That is why, from the last decades of the 18th century, Giuseppe Maggiolini found himself having to organise a workshop. Complex and structured, almost what we would call semi-industrial. And already at the beginning of the century, he had a workshop organised with carpenters who built, marquetry workers who created the inlays to be applied, polishers and so on. So, in other words, an organisation structured in such a way as to be able to respond to the numerous requests and commissions, while maintaining a level of quality that would always remain extremely high. The other major characteristic of his workshop is that the drawings are kept within the workshop and never leave it. In this way, he also ensures that his own creativity is preserved, as well as the wealth of the workshop, which is represented by this substantial collection of drawings. They do not leave, but remain the distinctive hallmark, the signature of the creation of his works.